All right, we're moving right along, which is early, which is fantastic. I'm going to ask Mr. Stuart Turner, Director of Avenir Technology Limited, to join me on stage if he is here. I'm trying to see, yes, okay, great. And he is moderating a session on how to determine CSD fees with Mrs. Sarah Tarawnah, CEO of SDC Jordan, Mr. Saleh Aruglu, Director of Project Management Office, CSD and TR of Turkey, and Mr. Haruna Jallo Waziri, CEO of CSCS Nigeria. Please join me on stage. Thank you.
So good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So this panel is to discuss the really important subject of CSD fees. I would have delighted this panel, I'd seen it 10 years ago, because before I became an IT guy, I actually set up two CSDs, new CSDs, and I remember the interminable conversations we had and the hours spent agonizing over CSD fees. So we're going to discuss that, and we're very keen on audience participation, so if you have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to ask them. There's a roving mic, I believe. So I will start off. The panel has been introduced. So I'd like to start off with you, Salah. And for each of the panelists, explain the relationship between the CSD and the exchange or the regulator, and then just briefly describe your CSD fee structure and the rationale for it. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Very glad to be among this very distinguished team of guests. I'm so proud. I would like to thank as well Ida of Qatar for their hospitality and for the arrangement. My name is Sarah Tarawnah. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Securities Depository Center of Jordan. And thank you, Stuart, for raising that very sensitive question. Indeed, because there has always been, I mean, we're all depositories, almost all depositories here in this venue, but there has been always a continuous struggle between depositories and other entities, especially the exchanges, Stuart, in relation to how the fee structure should be settled or how it should be organized between these two institutions. And I believe the starting point that we should highlight on is how CSDs were established. Were they basically separate entities, corporations, or were they part of the exchanges? And that's, I believe, the main obstacle when it comes to all depositories being, from inception, part of the exchanges as departments within the exchange itself. And then when they separated from the exchange, which is really crucial for depositories to do, this is where the crucial part related to dealing with the fee structure becomes a struggle, because exchanges tends to feel that this is their fees, their structure of the fees, and then they give you a small part. This is where you, although I do realize that both entities complement each other in terms of what needs to be done. When you sit and start to decide the fee structure for any organization, you have to take things into consideration like the risk you assess, the risk you take. And we all know that depositories are the risk-taking agencies in the capital markets because they run the collaterals, they deal with membership, they have the clearing and settlement process. Of course, I'm not underestimating the exchange's operations and tasks, but however, there are a lot of things to be done on the depository side. And this is where it's really important to set the fee structure base taking into consideration the risk depositories take. So there are a lot of a vast area of fee structure that should be targeted for CSDs. And just a word of advice coming from my experience on this topic, because we're still struggling with the exchange at the Jordanian capital market in relation to how fees should be split between the exchanges and the depositories. Try to label your fee based on what you do specifically, because one of the major obstacles that I faced, or we faced at the depository, was related to the label of the fees. So the bylaws stated that depositories charge for, they call it trading commissions, and this is not basically trading. You need to be really clear that the fees that you get as depositories are more related to this clearing and settlement process that you do, and this is really hectic for depositories. It's really a risk-taking operations. On the other hand, there are a lot of, I wouldn't say tariff list, but a lot of fees that depositories can charge for, starting from the record keeping, starting from the membership fees. It's really important for depositories to be able to always, at all times, maintain their financials and not basically just rely on the volume of trades that happens on the capital market. So in Jordan, for example, we charge for the membership. We have members of public shareholding companies, financial companies, service companies like brokers and custodians. So we charge fees based on the capital of each public shareholding company or financial brokerage firm. This is on one side, and this is rather sustained, I would say, but the other side is more related to the clearing and settlement process that we do, and this is, as you all are aware, is linked to the volume of trades that happen on the exchange. So this fluctuates, and it differs from one time to another, depending on the exchange's performance. So you need to have two types of fees to be able to maintain your operations and to be able to maintain your financials. One would be really stable, the other would also fall under that direction. And if I may add to that, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but this is a topic I find really sensitive and important for CSDs to be able to understand. On the other hand, you have to have another set or another structure for certain type of fees to be charged for in return to value-added services that you provide, whether to all your stakeholders, whether members or whether investors. So if you have any special value-added services, it would be really beneficial for depositories also to rely on such services and charge fees for. And this is something you need to take with cautious as well. So I'm going to stop here and
thank you very much. You are passionate.
Yeah.
Salih, you want to explain the structure in Turkey and the basis of the fee structures? Okay. I think we have a slide.
Yeah, we have a slide I had sent 1 hour ago. Okay. First of all, it's a great pleasure for me to be with such esteemed community and panelists. My name is Salih Eroğlu. I am PMO Director. Okay, second slide, please. Okay, thanks so much. Borsa Istanbul Group consists of 3 companies, and MKK is a group company of Borsa Istanbul. These 3 companies are legally separated. They are separate legal entities. One of the companies is Borsa Istanbul Stock Exchange, and it is the market operator, as you know. The other one is Central Counterpart, CSP. We call it Takas Bank in Turkish. The other one is MKK, Central Securities Depository and Trade Repository of Turkey. Beyond the traditional approach, we provide custody services for the Turkish Mercantile Exchange also. Due to our registry role for electronic warehouse receipts for agricultural products like wheat, corn, olive, cotton, hazelnut, sunflower seed, we have a relation with Turkish Mercantile Exchange also. Electronic warehouse receipts are traded on the Turkish Mercantile Exchange, and transfer of electronic warehouse receipts between investment institutions and holders are carried out through our system, MECACA system. Our regulators are Capital Markets Board and Central Bank of Turkey are our regulators. And I can briefly explain about the omnibus links we have. According to our account structure, we have omnibus links with foreign CSDs. One link is with Austrian CSD, and by this link, Austrian issuers companies' equities are dual listed in Borsa Istanbul Stock Exchange. And there is an omnibus link with Euroclear Bank and Azerbaijan CSD also. Okay, the second question, European Union's financial market operator ESMA indicates that CSDs shall offer their service on a reasonable commercial terms. In accordance with ESMA's indications, our fees are evaluated and approved by the Turkish Capital Markets Board. Fee calculations are made according to parameters like, as you can see, capital market instrument type. It's in the left side according to audience. Member type and transaction type. And of course, there are other parameters, but the basic parameters are these ones. And to briefly summarize our fee structure, we get fees from membership services like it differs from intermediaries, issuers, portfolio management companies, and CCPs. We get fees from investor account opening and maintenance services, issuer services, dematerialized capital market instruments insurance services, custody, settlement, corporate action, cash distribution, and other services like reporting, information provisioning, and etc. I can briefly summarize our fee structure like this.
Thank you. Hello. Nigerian perspective.
Thank you, Sheikh, and thank you very much for hosting us, Eda. This is a wonderful setup, and it needs to be copied. But that's not what this panel is about. This panel is about fees, and I think the first thing we have to look at is how's the CSD structured? Are you structured as a utility, which means that you're owned by either the market, the regulator, or the settlement banks? And so the purpose of what you are established for would be different in the sense that you're built as a utility to serve the market. So you're not a for-profit. If you're not a for-profit and you're built like a utility, the fee structure definitely is different. In the sense that your owners or your equity holders or the set of people or companies that have established you demand a certain if you like, service from you and will determine what kind of fees you charge. As such, you're built to just have enough money to invest in infrastructure and build a service for the market. If you're in that category, you have less headache than most of us, in the sense that you submit a bill, you have a budget based on what your budget is, in many cases, determines how much fee you charge in the market. Or you estimate what the market size is, and the fee is determined by that context, in many cases. We were at DTCC last year, and we saw a model that was almost like that. DTCC is the biggest CSD, CCP, or post-trade company, if I believe, in the world, because of the size of what they clear and settle. And they are built as a utility, even though they are owned by the settlement banks, I believe. And so their fees are structured in such a way that they're not distributing profit. Now, if you're built as a CSD and you have shareholders who are expecting certain level of return on the investments, your fee structure will be slightly different. Just like we are as a CSD in Nigeria, we're owned partly by the exchanges, the settlement banks, as well as the broker-dealer community. And so there are three expectations here. One, your stakeholders expect that you service them at a lowest cost possible, which is the investors, the companies that are listed, as well as other stakeholders. But you also are required to invest in infrastructure, technology, people, all of that at the maximum level to service that stakeholder institution. But then you have another stakeholder, which is your shareholders, who are expecting that, well, we'll put in money here, your market infrastructure, we should see some return. Balancing those three aspects is very difficult in some cases, like we're seeing. Now, when you have such a situation, your fee structure typically is determined by the regulator. So for every time you have a fee change or you're trying to introduce a new fee, the market collectively would have a pressure point with the regulator. There will be resistance. The regulator will try and determine that whether or not you deserve to increase or to add these fees. In these cases, the balancing act is very critical. So in such way, you probably have 3 or 4 areas where you could charge fees. Number one is your depository fees for the issuers who are on board like we do. The second one is on transaction fees. The third one is, like what Sarah said, the value-added services which you charge fees on. And these days, the fight around the value-added services critically is on data services. The last speaker talked about AI and using data and all of that. We've seen an increase in CSDs beginning to have a market data business, which is competing with the exchanges as well. Now, the key question here is, who owns the data? Is it the exchange? Can you replicate the same thing at the CSD? Or is it the brokers who claim that we trade, so that data belongs to us? Now, multiple fees can be charged on that market data services, whether it's by efficiency of what data you have from the analytics, which is what everybody is looking for. But then what are you selling? What's the exchange selling? What are the brokers selling? Who owns the data? In my mind, the CSD is uniquely positioned to actually create value, both for the market participants, the exchanges, the investor, the issuers, as well as the shareholders in the event that they have shareholders, in a very unique way and without having to disrupt the market. But that finding that balance is critical, and the regulator has to be handheld to do that. Otherwise, I think for us as a CSD is one of the best business you can be in a post-trade perspective. Stuart.
Thank you very much. Just on that point, Sarah explained the different, you've got the different stakeholders involved in these fees. What flexibility do you have in changing fees, or do you want to change fees, and where would you like to change fees?
Okay, great question, Stuart. Well, taking this towards the legal side of it, because one of the main obstacles, of course, if you want to change the fee structure, would be the bylaws, or basically the legislation. So if you have the fee structure so determined and so bound by the legal provisions in the law, that is when I would say you would have a problem, because we all know that changing laws is not something that easy. It's not a process that could be done in a short period of time. So what you have to do is to just get the base within the law to be able to charge for wherever fees or services you will be able to add. And you would have it in like a bylaws that would be more flexible to amend. This is something really crucial, because in Jordan, for example, we do have this setup, as I mentioned, in the laws, and then the bylaws state that you can charge for this and that, and you can add to that. So this is basically when it comes to the legal side, because I do know for a fact that a lot of institutions and a lot of entities, they do not have that flexibility. So in order for the depository to be able to change the fee structure, it would be a hectic process that would take so much time and probably wouldn't go well, because as also Haruna mentioned, it's always raising or basically having to impose more fees is always faced with resistance, especially from members. I wouldn't say investors, because investors basically are being charged by the members. So it's like you're not like the first point of contact with the investor when it comes to the fees, because they get charged by the brokers, and the brokers pays for the CSD. This is the way it goes, at least in the Jordanian capital market. So flexibility is one very important aspect of that, and it has to come from the base of the law to be able to again move forward. But having said that, and since you've mentioned the different aspects of changing or basically looking at fees. As I mentioned previously, you have to have a stable platform for certain types of fees, and I believe maybe one of the suggestions I was looking into when I started my argument with the exchange. Although the CSD in Jordan was never a part of the exchange, we were always from inception a self-regulated entity or a separate entity that was established by virtue of the securities law as a separate legal entity. So, but the situation, the way it used to be like there was a whole, one entity, a sole entity that used to be to run all the operations. That was, of course, before 1997. So there used to be something called the Amman Financial Market, and then it ran all the operations. So it was the regulatory authority, it was the executive authority as well. So when the securities law of 1997 was passed, three entities it was separated to three entities. So the regulator, which is the Jordan Securities Commission, and then the Amman Stock Exchange and the Securities Depository Center. So we were never part of the exchange, and yet they still think that we take part or a share of the commissions, that because it was labeled as trading commissions. Mm-hmm. So. I would have an example to talk about related to the value-added services, although I do not charge for those yet as depository. But to give you an example, as Harun as well mentioned, depositories are the main source of data, if you ask me, because the ability to analyze the data into important information that could add insight for the investor and the stakeholders. This is something depositories can do, because exchanges, they only have the information, a limited part of the information related to the trading. As we are all well aware, depositories run two sides of ownership transfer, if I may say. So there's the one coming from the market related to the trading transactions that occur on the market, and the other one would be on the OTC side, we call, or we could say the exempted transfers, the exempted ownership transfers. That is related to the direct transfer of ownership that the CSDs perform. For example, family transfers, inheritance transfers, court order transfers, things like that. And this is where we also charge. Of course, it varies and it's different from the transactional fees that we charge for in terms of the clearing and settlement, because we do not settle and clear those transactions. We perform the ownership transfer on T0 basis. So just to mention an example related to other value-added services CSDs can charge for, I would say, for example, as you're also aware, that CSDs place attachments over securities, because you run the central depository, the central registry. So depends, of course, on the jurisdiction and on the legal aspects related to the legislations that you perform under. You do face, as depositories, you do place certain attachments such as pledge, such as lien. So on this side, for example, we did basically develop a special pledge, electronic pledge system, and that was provided to the banks, only members of banks. So they are members of the SDC, and they are members of, they are basically pledgees, we call them. So they're pledgee banks. We provided this system for the banks, so they would be able to place pledges over the securities handled, of course, under their jurisdiction or under their, I would say, control, depending on the accounts, the setup of the accounts. So this is a value-added service that could be provided to banks that would also make the life of us as CSDs more easier, because there's a risk related to running or performing that kind of pledges or kind of attachments. So CSDs, for example, could charge for such value-added services to be provided to the member, of course, if the member is willing to do so. Because when we provided the pledge, the electronic pledge system to the banks, they were able to perform the pledges under their terms and under their conditions. And the value added for them was to be able to pledge those securities under the control of the brokers that are basically part of such banks. So liquidating the assets, which basically are the underlying assets behind the, I would say, the facilities the bank provided, would be very easy for banks to do so. So it would be, for them, a more quicker process, a more flexible and easy process. So this is something related to systems, of course, because this was handed to banks, and banks are a private sector. They are members of the SDC. We looked at it differently from, I would say, another example. We call it a lien system, and this is a system that was provided to, for example, the taxation department in Jordan. Taxation department, they place also attachments over securities for a certain period of times and for certain circumstances and details. So we were able to also develop a special lien electronic system that was provided to certain, I would say, formal entities. Yeah. Who are entitled by law to place attachments over securities, and this was provided for free, of course, because it was we wouldn't be able to charge the government for something that was that we did in the first place. Services, I would say. Although I have not charged yet for services, I'm going to talk tomorrow about an electronic service that we provided also to the investors, but it was provided for free. Because at the first stage, I wanted all the investors to be able to understand the value-added service that we provide as CSD, and be able to benefit from it and understand what's going on the market. So in tomorrow's talk, I'll be talking more about the e-portfolio service that we provided. But this does not mean that depositories cannot charge for such services if they are named under value-added services. However, going back again to the legal autonomy and the legal structure of the depositories, as we previously mentioned, it's really important to define the structure of the depository, being a corporation or being a separate entity, and to have the base in the laws to be able to also, again, amend and be as flexible as possible to add to the fee structure that you have, regardless whatever that is.
Cool, thank you. Saleh, are you happy with the fee structure? You've got flexibility to change it, and where would you change it?
Actually, we have a strict dependency on our regulatory capital markets board on the fee structure, and our fees are evaluated yearly based according to revaluation rate, which is announced by the Ministry of Trade and Treasury and Finance. And we update our fees according to the revaluation rate, and then our board of directors approve the fees, and then capital markets board approve the fees, and we announce the update to our members by this way. Okay. That's all.
Yellow, do you want to add to any of that?
So for me, if I look at what's happening in markets generally, I think the fees that we earn today as CSDs, as traditionally seen, is going to go away very quickly. So we would see very soon that you can't charge on transaction fees because there are alternative platforms that don't charge as much as we do. You won't charge for depository fees from an issuer because an issuer will go somewhere else where they're not going to be charged depository fees. Where I see fees, for CSDs go forward are in the value-added services. So if I have certain services that you're consuming via APIs, I'll charge you for that API, I'll charge you for that data you're searching for, I'll charge you for the analytics of that data. And then, of course, if there are certain what I call off-the-site services like collateral management, lien services, and maybe ad hoc situations where you need certain unique boutique services that I can provide per individual in some form, would be where we'll go. Because we at the CSD Nigeria understand that there are alternative electronic systems that are actually trading already. So if you look at Bitcoin, I understand that last year, Nigeria traded $600 million of Bitcoin outside the market. Now, I'm not sure we traded in the main market $600 million like we saw. So in my thinking, and people, and the buy side is also squeezing out everybody in terms of fees. And so you're going to see less and less reliance on CSDs who will survive, on transaction fees, on depository fees, on standard fees that we charge, like membership fees and all of that. All that is going to go. So the focus would be, in my mind, value-added services, data services, and if you have APIs, because we're moving away from SWIFT, would be the things that I see CSDs working towards and the fees. And we have to build the competencies to be able to offer those services to exist. As you know, private markets are becoming bigger, listings are drying up, traditional markets are shrinking, and so we got to look for those things that make us relevant and critical. Yeah. And so by extension, create value for us and shareholders.
Okay. So I didn't want to take away from what you're doing tomorrow, but for a sort of final question before we open up to the floor. These opportunities now with better technology, you can give these value-added services, as I said, APIs and actual tools. And you're not charging yet, but do you see this as diversifying your revenue source?
Well, Stuart, honestly, maybe the main reason behind being able to, I would say, control the fee structure you would charge for value-added services is more related to the systems that you operate. So if you have an in-house system, because at the SDC we have an in-house developed system, that's called Scorpio. I'm going to talk about that a bit further tomorrow. So if you have an in-house developed system that runs the operations of the CSD and be able to more develop value-added services, this is when your costs are really capped to a certain a point of time. However, if you have that technology completely bought from a third party or from an external entity, this is when you would be really cornered to charge more for the end, of course, and I would say consumer, regardless, be it the member or be it the investor. So, of course, I'm not trying to get CSDs towards having an in-house developed system or off-the-shelf one, but this is really one major part of that is related and linked to the fee structure, because a lot of entities pay a lot of money on basically. First of all, getting those systems and be able to have them up and running and sustaining them, because we're talking about storage, we're talking about networks, we're talking about a lot of things that needs to be run in data centers and in disaster recovery plans. This is huge for CSDs to afford. So if you're able to also control your financials in a way that you could be able to invest further in technology and then have less fee structure based on the end investor, this is when you can have things more balanced. So it's not like a one way. You have to keep your both eyes on both sides.
Okay.
I would love, of course, to hear from the audience on their experiences on this regard. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, I'd like to take issue on a couple of those points, but it just sort of depends. Salah, have you have any? Are you charging new fee structures for your, because you're doing a lot of technological innovation, I understand, and are you finding that as a way of diversifying?
Yeah, of course. First of all, Turkish Ministry of Technology granted us MKK as an R&D center in 2013. So we developed our core systems and value-added systems with our R&D team. Actually, our R&D team consists of approximately 130 people. We categorize, over the past 10 years, we completed more than 46 projects and introduced numerous services and products for financial markets. These services and products can be categorized into 4 main topics. one topic is depository services, the other one is trade repository and reporting services, and the other one is corporate governance services, final investor services. In addition to custody services income, our products also generate us, value-added products generate us income also, especially public disclosure platform, electronic general meeting system, board of directors systems, electronic board of directors system, and our example, some of examples for this situation. I want to highlight a bit about electronic general meeting system.
Oh, yeah.
It's our e-voting system, and it's used in Turkey, and it's used in Indonesian CST, also KSI, since 2020. We developed the system in 2012, and it was first introduced to foreign markets in 2014. The first pilot was made pilot adaptation was made in Nigeria and Kenya in this year, 2016 and 17. And as I also mentioned, it is used in Indonesian CST, and we are currently working on this project with developing new features and maintenance. And we are doing, making some new projects for them also for Indonesian CST, Debt Securities General Assembly Adaptation Project. This system can be used used by all joint stock companies in Turkey. All transactions before, during, and after the General Assembly can be carried out with electronic signature. Companies, shareholders, representatives, investment institutions are some roles that are using this system. And I can give some numbers about this system. When it was first introduced in 2012, the electronic general meeting participation was 72. Now, last year, in 2023, it was over 18,000. Foreign investors' rate of electronic participation was 73% in 2012, and last year it was 97%. Wow. So the system is used by the related parties very effectively. I can briefly say this one, and there's an electronic board of directors system, and it is used in Turkey also. It's board of directors can make their meetings electronically and use electronic signature. We use also, we have public disclosure platform developed by, all these systems are developed by MKK's R&D team. And we have, besides the membership fees, we can get, as he said, data broadcasting organizations can use data simultaneously via PDP, and we have income from these data services also. And I can sum up like this.
Thank you. You have anything to add before we throw the gauntlet down?
So I think CSDs should also diversify their revenues based on where they're sitting. And I remember my first AMIDA meeting, Mr. Mohammed, the former president, was talking about that they own a football team or they have a feeder team. And he mentioned that Mo Salah was on the books of the Egyptian CSD, and I was really, really surprised. I don't know, is anybody from... it was soccer team, right? And that Mo Salah, who played for Liverpool, they had a stake on that. And that got me thinking to say, so a CSD owns a football team and has a stake on Mo Salah, and that was at the peak of Mo Salah in Liverpool, who I think is also a great player. And all the Everton fans are looking at me, but that's not the problem. You know, you got to diversify, but within the context of what your business is. So for us in the CSD in Nigeria, we went the route of electronic document management, in the sense that it was a very cumbersome paper environment where when I became CEO, I would get on my desk 6 kilograms of paper. I mean, 6 kilograms of paper a day is how many trees in a year. And we went through the route of saying, you know what, we have to gatekeep So we established a data room and started scanning papers and putting in our system and had a workflow. We stopped having a data room and said, keep the data room at your own end, scan it, send it to us through this forward system. We went further to say, let's come and help you set up a document management systems within the intermediaries. And I guarantee you today, I do not have one single paper on my desk as a CEO. Now, that is the line of business which you had gone into metamorphosize out of the need of what we do as a CSD. I think CSD should think clever, but in my mind, the area where we would really get traction is when we mine the data that we have, when we use it in the context of assisting our members or our stakeholders, monetize it. I think that's where CSDs are going to go in terms of sustainability as a business. Otherwise, that diversification is good, but within the context of your business. And for the regulators, will not look at you because this is technically outside the scope of what it is, because you're giving value-added services. And typically, you would be able to set your own fees or margins or whatever it is, because it's not regulated and because it's seen as a value-added services. And once you do it very well and target the needs of the market, you're likely to not have any pushback because you're giving value to the market. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's a lot of information there from 3 different CSDs. There are many more CSDs in the room. Does anyone want to add any other perspective or ask our distinguished panel any questions? Good. Do we have a microphone, please, in the front row? 2 microphones. Abdullah. Yep.
Thank you, Stuart. It's just to summarize what have been said in this excellent panel, I think, as you can see in Turkey, as Mr. Saleh said, we can see lots of diversification is happening in Turkey. And it's obvious that they are fine with the fees. And I agree also with Sarah when she mentioned about the sharing the fees or the cost between the exchange and the clearinghouse. I think this action is happening in most of the stock exchanges because the issuer would like just to pay for a single entity, and then it's a listing fee and it's like a depository fee as well. And we know that any cost is bear to any party would be bear to the eventually to the investor. So if it is charged to the investor, it means that the transaction cost is high, and again, it affects negatively the volatility. Mm-hmm. And I also agree with Haruna when he mentioned that entity is a profit entity or a non-profit entity or utility. Then, of course, if it is a profit-making entity, they'll have to barely break even. We know that the cost of transaction is really high. If not, then the government will have to support or grant the entity itself. We've seen recently role of the depositories on the primary market, not only in the secondary market, on the primary market and post-trade services, because we are now focusing on the secondary market. We know that the cost is high. On the primary market, we have seen the role of the CSDs when it comes to IPOs, of course, be it EIPO, and then secondary market is also common. However, post-trade services, as Mr. Saleh mentioned, the e-voting, and we have seen it in different jurisdictions today. Our colleagues from IDA and Doha, they also added this value-added service. And of course, we know that for the issuers, it will be cost-effective because they don't have to pay for the hotel and all this. So, and also for jurisdictions where they have foreign ownership, it will be cost-effective for the board and the shareholders to remotely join and do the e-voting on the AGMs. Last but not least, and this is the most important part, that what we have learned also on the cash dividend, we like to also congratulate our colleagues in IDA and Doha, where they have distributed 27 billion, and that's a big amount, and this is a big responsibility. However, this is again an additional value-added service where the clearinghouses or CSDs can get benefit of. One would be that you can charge for this value-added service, because previously shareholders used to go and collect their dividend in checks, and that is again a stationary cost on the issuer. So today it's cost-effective for the issuers, Number two, the CSD can make overnight interest out of those cash, huge cash dividend that is being maintained by CSDs. I hope that I didn't destroy this confidential thing, but again, it's a service that we can all learn. This is the service that we are learning or we are gaining out of it. Thank you.
So just to mention that, the thing about those value-added services that the market has to have had that structure for it to do. So, for example, when you talk about dividend distribution or coupon payments, we have been doing coupon payments for the sovereign government savings bonds since it was established, because we have a very advanced financial system in terms of connectivity. So in Nigeria, bank-to-bank transfers, and I keep telling the Europeans or the Americans when we go have conversations, and I'm thinking, it's actually easier for me to transfer money from Nigeria to, say, Bank of America than for somebody in Bank of America to transfer to TD Bank. That's how advanced. So for us, that has already been established. But I think the key thing is we see that CSDs, we see everything. How do we remove ourselves from the traditional fees? And when it comes to primary market, for example, we have gone ahead to build systems that allow for an full end-to-end electronic primary market issuances in Nigeria. And we're about to test that to the highest level, because about 80% of the banks that are in Nigeria are listed. And there's a new rule by the central bank that says all banks have to recapitalize. So we're looking to do another $1.6 billion in terms of issuances by the banks in the next 18 months. So that will test that system.
Thank you, Rana. Again, as you have mentioned, that there are also non-core business services that CSDs can provide. And sometimes it's crazy, like you've mentioned the soccer team idea, but did not sustain. In addition to that, Egypt also, they owned a landmark hotel. Remember, they used to make revenue out of the wedding parties in the hall itself. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other contributions? No? Okay. I'd like to thank my distinguished panelists, and thank you the organizers and guests, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panel for this engaging conversation. Now, we are actually going to end today, because I know it has been a long day for everyone, but we would like to remind you to please join us for the 10th anniversary of IDA. It's going to take place at 7 p.m. in El Wassail, just across the hall. We promise it will be a fun night, so we hope to see you all there. There will be other invited guests from outside of the AMIDA conference, so hopefully we'll see you all there at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.